But that external influence, whether it's spiritual or whether it's an actual entity, God, that's doing that, has had a huge impact on me. And I think that came early on, not long ago. I've been telling my boys, I said, hey, you know what? I don't care if you think you're going to be buried, you're going to rot and be, consumed by maggots and buried 6 feet under, or you're going to heaven. You still have one chance at this planet Earth. And what are you going to do? What are you going to embark on? What are you going to do to create value and provide love and joy between you, your environment, your family, your friends, and that kind of stuff? So even if there is no God, I believe in God. Even if there's no God, I won't be around to go, see, I knew it, there wasn't one.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And in this episode, we're going to talk with my friend Michael. He says he grew up in a blue-collar environment, in a blue-collar home. And I believe him. He tells his story about growing up with his dad and about some of the challenges he had, feeling like there was these moments of normalcy, which sometimes you get when home isn't as normal as you'd like. This is an incredible story. It's about a man who's made his own life. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. Well, all right, Michael Sanger, welcome in.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've known you for some time, quite a long time. And
since the late 1800s.
Yeah, 1800s, maybe 1850.
Exactly, around that 1851. I forget which one, but around that time.
And I was very excited when I started seeing these series that you had put together. I started listening to them, and I said, you know what? I'm going to reach out to Mr. Foster and see if I can get on the show.
Yes.
It's like Joe Rogan. I'm a privileged guest. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So we've known you for a while, but you were born in Canada, correct?
Yep. I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is on the far, far east coast of Canada. Parents met in the Navy, and then by 6, we had moved to Vancouver, Canada, and that's where I grew up.
Across the continent.
Across the entire country, yes.
Right. Now, do you have memories from Nova Scotia?
No, not at all. I think we left after 2 years, lived in Ottawa,
okay,
Ontario, which I have some memories. Actually, we left in second grade, so I do have some memories from there. But then after that, after age of 7, went to Vancouver.
It is funny, but the very first memory that I have is when I lived in San Antonio. So I was born in New Haven, Connecticut. I don't remember anything. I've just seen photos. But San Antonio, when I was 3, I've got memories of. And it's a funny thing because I still have these images, right? And these sensory experiences when I was like 3 or 4 years old, being in San Antonio, very different than growing up in Pittsburgh. And, in Ottawa, do you have these like pieces of flashes of recollections that you brought with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I learned how to tell the difference between left and right. And
fundamental.
So I think it was 5 or 6, and we were at that time of our generation. I was taking the school bus, and the bus driver had to go a different route, and he was like, "Okay, I can take you close to where you live." And we came to a street, and he said, "Do I turn left or right?" And I knew which way to go, but I didn't know which way was left or right, and I, of course, picked the wrong one. And then my friend, who obviously does not remember this, he showed me his he showed me, he goes, you lift up your two palms with your thumb sticking out horizontally, and then you see the L, so that's left. And I've
Right.
always had that memory.
That's awesome. So you mentioned in the conversation start, growing up and, going to Ottawa and then going to Vancouver. But it was interesting. You said that you kind of grew up in a blue collar environment. And I thought that was an interesting phrase. We still in our culture talk about blue collar, white collar. I think it's kind of funny though. I think that a lot
Right.
of businesses now, even if it's a manufacturing business, there's not really this distinction, right? That it doesn't seem to be as pervasive as it might have been perhaps on a quote unquote factory floor back in the 30s
Right.
and 40s and the like, but we still talk about it that way. What made your upbringing something that you talk about as being a blue collar upbringing?
Yeah. Well, yeah. As I was looking at and thinking about like what I meant by that is, first of all, my distinction between blue collar and white collar is blue collar is workers, could be manufacturing, it could be working at a restaurant, could be driving a bus. And I always looked at white collar as being professionals, i.e. they got a degree, they got some type of professional education, and then went on to leadership management roles that provided more stability. And the reason why I say a blue collar is my dad, first of all, didn't even finish high school. And as soon as he turned 18, he joined the Navy and got out of Kelowna, BC. That's where he grew up and stuff. So, and he was a union man his entire life. He had different jobs, but he was always a union man. And so growing up in that blue collar environment, it seemed like every year we would go on an expense lockdown in the house because wherever my dad was working, the contract would be up and there was a threat of either a lockout or a strike. And my dad being a union man, he hated management. And by the time I was 18, I was like, I want to go into management because I've seen what that is like to be on the other side. I'd rather be on that side. So,
right. That is interesting. So I grew up in Pittsburgh where there was a ton of steelworker
sure,
folks, thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees in the steel industry. And there was one large plant, Alcoa, which was out in Butler. And I grew up there in the 70s and 80s, and a lot of these steel manufacturing plants started to shutter, and it dispensed with thousands of jobs at a time. It was really powerful. And you had mentioned just now about kind of the degree, and it's interesting because maybe that is the distinction. Maybe the distinction is the kind of education you get, which is kind of interesting in today's world because I am familiar with a lot of either CEOs or internet startup companies or internet startup managers, influencers, business owners who actually didn't get any degree at all. Right. They just, through high school,
sure.
They started to do internet marketing. Right. And they were like, this is awesome. I can crush it in internet marketing. And so I was just listening to this guy, Russell Brunson. He's the one who founded ClickFunnels. Right. And yes, he had a degree, but it's not an MBA. It's not like this fancy business degree-ish thing. He just was like, hey, I'm going to start internet marketing. And you don't even need a higher degree for that. Yet you can still reach the echelon of these quote unquote professional level, salaries and careers. So, I'm wondering now that you made a conscious choice when you were young to move into management and get a real professional degree. I think you have an MBA. Are you seeing now that, and do you think that you're as quote unquote safe or as predictable and safer or more predictable than your dad was in the union contract work?
Great question. In today's environment with companies, large enterprises laying off thousands of employees, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Our parents growing up, a lot of them were afforded companies that they work at for their entire career, got a pension, and away they go. I've always looked at my degree as an opportunity to have that conversation with the company, with my experience to create value and have them hire me and so forth. But when it comes down to the almighty dollar as in pertaining to the stock price, most of the times I've been in public companies, if we're not meeting the stock price or the market expectations, changes will be made. And even if you're doing a phenomenal job, that things could happen. And that certainly happened
Yeah.
with COVID. I was the vice president of marketing at COVID just before COVID hit, and they brought in a new CEO, and that person dismantled senior leadership, including my role. So regardless of my role capacity or MBA, and certainly my experience in security, um, um, uh, data security industry and protection and stuff, working that as a marketing leader, it didn't matter. So I look at it as the degree as just really as a way of having those conversations. I mean, even to a point now, it's not like I send out my resume and people see an MBA and they go, "Oh, we got to talk to him." Like, I
Right.
won't say the MBA is diminished, but certainly it's almost like you need to have that before we can start, but it doesn't differentiate you.
Right. That is interesting where, the degree of uncertainty today doesn't necessarily matter if you're a white collar, blue collar, no collar,
Mm-hmm.
t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of it out there. Now, when you talk about your dad kind of hunkering the family down and saying, "Okay, fam, we've got some, tighten our belts a little bit." And that was something you got to a routine on. How did that affect the family life? Did you all prepare for it and kind of rally together? Was there kind of grumbling and resentment or a little bit of bitterness and anger?
Well, I think, I remember those memories from 10, 11, 12, maybe 13, early teen years. And you, you, you did what you could to survive, right? So you just hunkered down, you made steps. What that meant is mom who bought groceries reduced the, the groceries, and no, you're not drinking milk. You're not drinking lemonade. We're not buying that. You can drink water. It's, those kind of things. And, family dinners with ribeye bone and steaks and lobster tails. Obviously we're not happening. Not that they ever did, but, so I think
Yeah.
as a family, we sort of just, okay, let's get through this.
Did that help you come together as a family? Did you grow up in what you thought was a tight-knit family?
No, because during that period, it was stressful. So when we all pitched in and did what we could to help, it was still a stressful period. And, that caught, the fact that I can remember those moments and talk, as you brought it up or even mentioned that as what it was like growing up, it's not a positive moment. So it causes stress and of course, anxiety as well. So,
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother. Yeah.
Okay. And did you guys, during these periods, did you guys get along and support each other, or was it a challenge for both of you?
I think it was a challenge for both of us. I think, as siblings, gosh, we fought all the time. And now as adults, we're, good friends, family, will look after each other, whatever you need, that kind of stuff. And I saw that with my two boys. They fought like heck all the way up to 18, 19, and now they're getting along. So it's a
Awesome. I find that too. Eric, my brother, and I think we had some really great patches when we were growing up. We liked a lot of the same stuff in terms of comic books and movies. And then there was a period of drifting where I was trying to carve out my own identity separate from his, right? Which is natural and what you need to do as a younger sib. And then in early adulthood, we were physically and geographically separated out, where he went one place, I was in another place, and we were just kind of carving our own way. But we're much closer now as adults than we were as kids. And I'm sure with your sons, what I tell my daughters is, look, it's your longest relationship of your whole life, so they're going to be ups and downs. With your brother now, do you guys connect, and do you connect as whole family now with your mom and your dad?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Actually, I was just up there, took my boys up and my girlfriend, and we went up to Kelowna and stayed a week at my brother's place. Saw his two boys are like the same age as mine.
Awesome.
And did fun things. We did golfing, we did outdoor activities, and it was such a great trip. And mom was obviously part of it too and being involved. So it was all good.
That's wonderful. Are your folks still alive?
No, my father passed away, I think about 2 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. He, the body starts to fail, and systems break down, and then eventually we had him in a home, and then in hospice. They don't call it hospice in Canada, but it's the same idea. And then
Mm-hmm.
he passed. And I think the only difficult part of that is I couldn't be there for my mom for the service because it was during COVID
No.
and the borders were locked down. And I was even
No.
talking to my brother going, you know what, I could fly to Bellingham, Washington, and then jump across the border. Right.
Right. You could
And,
walk
and I
across
was,
the border.
and once my mom got wind of that, she laid into me and said, you are not doing that. Cause she figured I would die from COVID on the way up. But anyway,
Oh, it's so interesting and sad, because those were things you heard about during COVID with passing, and you couldn't go to funerals or you couldn't be there at these special things. And how did you end up supporting your mom from a distance?
well, just, daily phone calls. And then fortunately, my brother is in the same town as she was. So he really
Okay.
stepped up, and I've always appreciated that, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
thank God he was there because now mom was all alone. And that was a huge hit to my mom because she had been married 55 plus years, and,
Right.
and now he was gone and she was alone for the first time since the Navy. That's where they met in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
She must have been in her 20s the last time she was alone.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. So if they got married in 65, she was 23. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Well, I'm sorry about that passing, and I'm sorry that's how, that went. And is your mom feeling better now? Is she recovered, or is it still a
Oh,
sadness in her life? If you
she
can
is
talk about that.
recovered in strides. Our
Oh,
mom was
great.
because of our challenges in the family with my father's alcoholism. My mom was the peacekeeper, the house manager. She was a loving, caring, still is a loving, caring, and amazing woman. Um, so of course, my dad passed. We had the funeral, and then my brother and I are going to go. Let's give her a couple months, 3 months. But what are we going to do? Is she going to go into, what is her reaction going to be? Is she going to go into
Mhm.
depression? Is she going to give up on life? Because you hear about people been married forever, and the other one passes away not too much longer after that. Anyway, so my mom, in classic mom she goes, you know what? I'm going to start going back to Palm Springs and golf in the wintertime. And
Hmm.
we were like ecstatic. So, because my parents used
Yes.
to come to Palm Desert and they rent a place and they're on a golf course and they play for 6 months and they go back to Canada when the winter's over. She said she's coming down. Of course, I'm in San Diego and we're like, we're going to make this work. And she's been doing that now almost, this will be her third year coming down. So she's just been absolutely phenomenal.
Wonderful. Good for her. It's an interesting thing when you grow up. So I did not grow up with alcoholism that was active in my family. Uh, could be passive, you could say, but my father grew up in a family beset with alcoholism. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a old school, like old school alcoholic, and my mom's dad too. But I never met him because he passed way, way, way before I was born. But I remember my grandmother, who is one of the most amazing people I'd ever met in my life, transforming when my grandfather passed, right? Because he was failing and he was in ill health and decline, and years of alcoholism made him, bitter and angry and just uh, a lot of times just unpleasant to be around. And when he passed, she was sad, of course, but she was like, "This is awesome. I kind of get to do now whatever I want." And it
Nice.
was a little bit liberating. Does your I'm sure your mom was bereft and sad, but does she feel like she almost has a new lease, or not a new lease, but a new chapter in her life? And do you help her and see that in her?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the fact that she is taking up the mantle and now committed to golfing, coming down during the winter to Palm Springs, which she has all her Canadian friends. It's all the snowbirds and the
Uh huh.
northeastern states. They come and golf for 5 months in, nice 75-degree weather on a golf course. And she has her friends down here. She's active with all the golf tournaments. She's 82 and she's still golfing. She golfs 5 days a week.
Good for her.
And and she's got friends down here and that kind of stuff. And like I say, she took the path of, okay, I now need to make my life about me and what do I want to do with that. And when she, like say, wanted to do this, my brother and I were like, absolutely, Mom, we're going to support you doing it. And then my brother and I would talk on the side and go, we need to do everything possible to get her down to Palm Springs because we don't want her there during the first winter alone. Because when winter hits where they are in Kelowna, it's lockdown, right? You don't go out, it's cold, it's bitter, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, no, that's wonderful for you and your brother to rally. So you mentioned your mom is kind of this bedrock and house manager, housekeeper, homemaker. And, some people, maybe not some people, but the phrase homemaker gets a little bit of a short shrift from my perspective. Someone says, oh, she's a homemaker. And it's more than just making the beds and sweeping and stuff. There's actually this idea of making home, making it work, making it viable, loving, and a sanctuary for the family. Yes. That's really what homemaking is.
Exactly.
It sounds to me like your mom was that.
Yeah. Well, whether or not she, that was her ambition or like her desire. I think it was, but also because of the environment that I grew up in, she was also a peacemaker too. And so she kept that. She was a very tight mantle of keeping Dad and his drinking in check, and then ensuring her two boys were doing okay,
and shielded, kind of shielded. What was, if I can ask, was he a mean drunk or was he?
My dad was a verbally abusive alcoholic, so he was a very, very, very angry man. When I would get home and Dad would be there, I literally a walk into the house is to first gauge is what mood is he in?
Oh,
is he angry? You stayed clear. If he was in okay mood, you just tiptoe, right? Living in an alcoholic family is very much like there's the metaphor of a mobile, the one that hangs across a baby's bed, like the mobile, the floating thing that goes around in circles.
Yep.
Well, in an alcoholic home, an alcoholic will whack that mobile and it'll spin and everybody waits for it to stop spinning. And then once it stops spinning, everything's back to normal until it gets hit again. And you don't know when it's going to happen or how long it's going to last. So, so it was tough. I mean, my upbringing, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. My upbringing was tough. I mean, my dad, I hate using this, but I've summed it up this perfectly. My dad was the greatest father between drinks 1 and 4. Before that, he was angry. And then after that, explosions of anger came unannounced without a doubt. So If I came home and he's like, hey, Michael, how you doing? I know he was between drinks and 1 and 4.
Oh my God, Michael, that's astonishing. That is such a marker. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's, as a young...
I was going to say, you mentioned about early memories in Ottawa. So I'll tell you my story of green eggs and ham. Okay. So I was probably 5 or 6 because we're still living in Ottawa, and I was reading Green Eggs and Ham. And on page 53, he says, will you do it? Will you have them on a boat, on a train, on a plane, blah, blah, blah. And then on page 53, he goes, why don't you try having them? And he goes, I do try them. I like them. I'll try, that kind of stuff. And I remember turning to my dad and saying, what is this word try? And he explained it to me, and I felt a sense of pride and happiness from that. Now, why is that 30-second memory blocked into my head? And it's visual. It's like literally in my head. And all I could tell is because he helped me. He gave me information. He behaved like a father, or that he didn't yell at me. Isn't that funny how that story is burned in my head? Because I was probably fearful of asking him a question because he didn't know how he react, even at a very, very young age.
That's yeah, that's incredible. I'm not a brain scientist, but I do know because I do this actually for different webinars and stuff. We have the cerebral cortex, but deep inside the limbic part of the brain is the hippocampus and the amygdala. And these are the parts of the brain where that regulates, controls, or is housed long-term memory and emotion. And what's really interesting biologically, Michael, they're touching each other. They're right
Hmm.
next to one another. And
Right.
so that's why we all remember like our first meaningful kiss, right? Because
Right.
it's a memory and an emotion, right? Packed in. That's that moment on page 53 for you, like this moment of love and security and saying, this is what it's like.
This
And
is
it
what
never
it
leaves your
needs to be.
mind.
This is what it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what it could be. Right. In fact, I was just on a conversation last night with Zach Van Nuss, a marvelous man, and he was talking about, and we were talking about the idea of preciousness and of value, and that oftentimes preciousness and value comes from knowing that it's scarce and rare. Right. It's like that moment with your dad on page 53 that was valuable because it was so precious because it didn't happen
Yeah.
very often.
Yeah. And you're so
Wow.
right.
Wow. What a memory. Um, so do you tell your two sons some of these stories about growing up with your pop?
No, they're going to listen to this recording after.
That's wonderful.
I've probably shared stories, from time to time, maybe one on one, but this has been a great avenue to tell and reiterate what it was like growing up.
So I have a
I
question for you then.
Yep.
Uh, Alcoholism runs in my family. So I've told my girls since they were little the stories to make sure that they knew that our family had that risk, that addiction is heritable. And so I said, you'll be mindful, super mindful of that fact. And I'm pretty careful of that fact. I do enjoy an old fashioned, and I have wine with dinner, but I'm very conscious of um, putting limits for myself because I just have to. I just have to, right? I have to. As you were growing up, were you aware of that, and did you have to put guardrails or limits on yourself, or are you a quote unquote sober and not drinking at all? How did that play out for you in your life?
Well, I think, similarities to your story, like your father told you of his dad's drinking. I didn't have that. I was in that house, right?
Yeah.
So how did I cope? I drank.
Oh.
And so when I first realized I became an alcoholic, well, first subconsciously, right? So
Hmm.
I was 13. I had 2 beers. And of course, back then, 2 beers, all you need now was just flying, right?
Right.
And that wave of feeling taken over my body, I still remember this. I remember saying in my head, I want to feel like this all the time.
Hmm.
Confidence, brazenness, the ability to stop being a shy, introverted kid. It was all the alcohol provided all those things that I desired for characteristics that I did not have the strength in me because my father wasn't there to help guide and build those characteristics. So when
Hmm.
first time I got drunk, 2 beers, I was like, oh my God, this is how I want to feel like. And so I chased that feeling for 27 years before it got me into AA.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So how long have you been sober?
I think next year will be 20 years.
Congratulations on that 20-year. That's remarkable. Well done, you.
Yeah. But
Wow.
what got me into going into at the age of 40 and going to AA wasn't me going, you know what, I got a drinking problem, because I spent my entire life going, well, at least I'm not as bad as my father, or at least I don't drink like my father did, right? I had all these little guardrails and protections to say yours is not as bad, right? Of
Hmm.
course. But what changed for me fundamentally was my oldest son. who was 4 at the time. So when I decided to leave, I was working for Shell Oil and go back, get my degree, get my MBA. I remember driving in Vancouver saying, I was excited about my career. I was going to be that white collar, right? That professional. I want a nice home, great family. I don't want to worry every year about expenses, because that's all I grew up with was, is cost, expense anxiety, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I remember driving and going, I will right that wrong. I will not even know who my kids were or how many kids. I was like, my kids will not see what I had to deal with, and they will be given a greater opportunity to thrive, grow, and be those successful type, because I didn't get that and I wanted my kids to have it. So that was my promise before I went back, got my degree and my MBA, because I was on this big career path, this personal path, and I was so excited. Anyway, so with that all said, I still drank, right? I still drank. I still managed. I still held on to it. I said it wasn't bad as my father, but that all changed in one moment on a Sunday morning. My 4-year-old son came downstairs. I was, of course, on the couch. It was 10 in the morning and hungover. That's how my weekends were, hungover.
Mm.
And he come down with the toys. He goes, Dad, let's play. And I said, well, Dad's got to do this today. He's got to do that. I'm busy, that kind of stuff. And the spark, that moment, that frozen in time of that promise I made when in my early young 20s of not repeating what my father did, hit me like a God shot, if you will. And what that was is that was my dad. Every weekend he had things to do. He had projects. He had yard work. He had stuff, which meant he never came to soccer games, which he never came to baseball games, which means he never even just conversed with me. He just managed his hangover. And here I was doing the same thing at age 4 when my son came down, and I was like, oh my God, I'm repeating it. And I this is the promise I made. Yeah. And so the net of it is I spent the next year white knuckling it, which is just stop drinking. But there was internal pain, right, from my upbringing that needed help, because I did a year. So I went 9 months, and then next one was 1 month, and then 3 weeks, and 5 days, and 3 days, and I realized I have a problem, and I finally found myself into AA, and since that day I walked in, next year will be 20 years.
Wow! Congratulations on the 20 years. That's so brave of you. And a couple of things that I thought was really interesting that you said. A phrase that you just used was a God shot. I've never heard that before, but I love that visual imagery of this divine energy coming into you at a moment, waking you up and reminding you of the promise that you made to yourself. I think it's very interesting.
I grew up in a Catholic family, and then, by the time I was in my 20s, and my list of things and people I hated, including my father on top of that list, God was part of that, right? God was on that list too, right? But the program allowed me to rekindle my spiritual connection.
Okay.
And I know there's someone looking after me, right? There's someone who's there to provide guidance and to remind me. And I listen to those words. We're very good at talking in our heads and having discussions and making decisions, right? But that external influence, whether it's spiritual or whether it's an actual entity, God, that's doing that, has had a huge impact on me. And I think that came early on, not long ago. I've been telling my boys, I said, hey, you know what? I don't care if you think you're going to be buried, you're going to rot and be, consumed by maggots and buried 6 feet under, or you're going to heaven. You still have one chance at this planet Earth. And what are you going to do? What are you going to embark on? What are you going to do to create value and provide love and joy between you, your environment, your family, your friends, and that kind of stuff? So, so even if there is no God, I believe in God. Even if there's no God, I won't be around to go, see, I knew it. There wasn't one.
See? We'll be right back. That's the one beautiful thing about humanity is the mystery of it. And we can talk more about faith journeys, but I want to get back to
Yeah.
something you had mentioned about kind of this, divine influence helping, shaping, and guiding. Did you have more earthly influences that helped shape and guide? Did you have mentors in your life where,
Yeah.
as you started to go into your 20s, you were figuring out, man, my upbringing wasn't the best, kind of feel on my own. I need some help. Did you have any of those, either men or women, who helped guide those early years?
Absolutely. Was a professor of mine in the business program at Quallen College that I went to. His name was Jim Turanian. And he was the first male mentor to actually say, you have skills. You have the ability to lead. You have the ability to make a change in your life. Like all those things that we as fathers need to instill in our children, right? I heard from him for the very first time.
How old were
And it
you?
was exactly the right timing when I needed to hear it. Because up to that point, I was doing, junior college, skipping around, going, what do I do with my life? Like any 20 something male.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also carrying this huge burden of my upbringing and that, which was holding me back. Right.
Mm.
And Jim Turani allowed me to grow, and he gave me that strength and confidence, which we are still friends today, 30 years later.
That's
He's
great.
retired now. And because of him, my belief and strength and confidence in those characteristics that I so desired when I first got drunk at 13, right,
Mm.
were awakened in me. And I started believing in myself. And it radically changed who I am. It's because of Jim Turanian, you and I know each other. Otherwise,
Right.
I would have never had the courage to go back and finish my degree, get an MBA, move to California, right? It is amazing how this one person changed my life fundamentally. And because of that, you and I are talking here on October 23rd, 2024 in the
Yeah.
evening about who I am, and just a phenomenal man. And that's why he loved teaching. They would always try to move him up into a head of the business program. And he goes, I love teaching. I love to inspire. Like they should make a movie about this guy. He's dearly a good friend. I love him to death. And he's because of him,
Yeah.
that I'm here.
I love that. What I love about that story, Michael, is that your personal launch out of meeting Jim was because he revealed things in you that you weren't confident or aware of, or you were too scared to look into because you didn't have that model at home to pull that out of you. And what I love about that story is that it's so personal and unique. And of the 9 billion people on planet Earth, the two of you guys met and he did something to you that changed the trajectory of your life. And what I also love about that story is that that's a universal story. We've all had people who shape and change and reveal ourselves to ourselves, or at least we hope to. We hope to have those mentors in life, and it's one of those things where your life is forever changed because of his love for you, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
he is a great man. Great man.
It's it's the power of love, and I think that we don't know oftentimes what impact we have on other people when you're with them, right? You don't know, especially if you're trying to guide a young person. um, are you finding now, as you get older, are you trying to find folks that you can mentor, and or are you still being mentored?
Um, I think I think the former.
Mm-hmm.
My plan is to get into is to get in my retirement years, which is still a few years away, but I want to teach.
Right.
Teach business class, teach marketing classes, whatever, right? But the goal is not to 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 earn a paycheck or keep my mind busy. Is if I have that opportunity to return that favor to one person, right,
Mm.
or others, then that fulfillment is so critical. Because one of my challenges in my career, I don't know if you've experienced it, is I've had an amazing career, helping companies make money. That is what I've given society, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
my role. And be able to teach and inspire that next generation and be an influence. This is my way of giving back. And I have never had the opportunity. Yes, I've volunteered. I've done a lot of great volunteer work, but as a focus, I've been just helping companies with the bottom line and their stock price, not directly, but right.
It's the
So
noblest profession.
Well, it pays well, which is why
Sure.
I'm doing it.
Absolutely. But there's value to it. I mean, I'm not going to dismiss the value of that, but I know what you mean in terms of, having a life-changing influence, like a real life-changing influence. Clearly, Jim changed your life, right? And that's something, and it might be, Michael, that there are a couple hundred people who would say, oh yeah, I'll raise my hand. He changed my life too. Right?
I would expect that.
Right? Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, because that's what he loved doing. It wasn't about teaching the materials in the book as part of the for the midterm. It was having an impact on young people who either, like he always told me, he goes, I can spot the achievers who will be successful in life. He always said that because he could read the room very quickly, right? The ones who are intently watching, who are like writing notes, who are like raising their hand when they have questions. And then there are others who need to be uplifted, right? They don't realize that they have that capacity in them. And it's such a, that his role in teaching was exactly why, myself and others have fallen under his guidance and tutelage, without a doubt, because that's what
I love your assessment of him in that distinction where he says, okay, I thought you were going to say, these are the people who want to be successful. They're raising their hand, they're engaged. And then there are people who are lazy and not interested. But you didn't say that. You said, then there are those people who need to be uplifted. So it shows in him that he had such a generous heart that he didn't dismiss the students who might be seemingly unengaged. Instead, he says, no, I need to uplift them.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have been in that, right? In that group.
But he helped to lift you up. I'm a huge fan of Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Right.
And he said, every child is capable of loving and deserves to be loved.
So true.
And it's the two pieces of it. It's not just deserves to be loved, but is capable of loving. And so Jim in that moment was like, every student is capable of learning.
Right.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So as you are looking at your two sons on the cusp of young adulthood, how is your parenting different now than it was X number of years ago when they were in their teens?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, obviously when they're teens living home, it's more nurturing and taking care of the house and making sure that they're comfortable, and then, encouraging them, helping them out with if they're in sports or doing homework. Now it's changed because they're adults, and I talk to them like adults now. I don't talk to them sorry. They're not my best friends. I'm still their father, and my job is to guide and nurture, right? That's my number one role, even if they're adults. It doesn't mean I don't treat them as children, right? I just treat them as adults. So I talk to them like adults, and they talk to me like adults. So those conversations are always interesting. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but my two boys have done like I did, right? This is my career choice next year. This is my career choice this next year. This is my career choice, right? And my ex and I, who are like funding this, are like going, "Hey, we got to get them through the bubble here." I call it the financial bubble, where I get them past to the college degree, and then they're out of the system. And so helping them, guiding them, and to do what they want to do. At first I was like, "Find your passion," and the problem is they were looking for something passionate, and then my story changed to more of, find out what interests you and then go after it. Mm-hmm. It'll all be revealed, right? So I had my oldest son who was just struggling, changing every time. And I had always planned college graduation gifts for them. And I'm a big world traveler. Like I took my boys to Thailand and China about 5 years ago, because I
That's
wanted them
great.
to get that international bug, because the world is so unique, this planet. Anyway, so I said to Ethan, I said, you are taking the semester off. I'm sending you on a 10-week, like, you remember the Australians doing their walkabout, right? They would
Right.
just go, right? I said, you're doing a walkabout. I said, but because it was September, he goes, Dad, I want to go to Japan. I want to go to Japan. So he went on a 6 weeks? Yeah, 6 weeks journey, 4 weeks in Japan, and traveled the entire country by himself,
Great.
including the trains, the hostels, that kind of stuff. All right. You can imagine parents freaking out, right? Okay. Texas every day, make sure. Okay. And then
Right.
he took the ferry over to South Korea and spent 2 weeks in South Korea before he came home. My goal
Wonderful.
was for him to find himself, or at least in this journey, realize he has all the strength and confidence and abilities that he needs to be comfortable with how he wants to do, about what he wants to do with his life.
Yeah.
And that's it was more of a confidence builder, because he was waffling on stuff and figuring things out, as we all did in our 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he came back, he got off the plane, I picked up in San Diego. He said, Dad, I'm so glad to be here. And two, I'm going into computer science.
Nice. There you go.
I
Mission
said,
accomplished.
good news, computer science, from data security, data integrity to AI. You're going to be busy. Good industry. Go.
Good industry to go into. No, I love that you did that as dad, and it kind of comes. I think it's very poetic, Michael, where you were afraid of your dad, and even remember a time when you asked him what you thought might be a tense question, and he responded with quote unquote normalcy. And maybe in your growing up years, feel like you couldn't reveal your true self, and that you had to be uplifted by another mentor. And
Right.
then it's poetic that you are like, no, son, I'm giving you all of this open freedom so that you can help reveal yourself to you, and you can be open with me. It's the complete opposite of how you grew up. Right.
Right.
So that, I think, to me, that's a true promise that you made to yourself when your son was 4 and you were lying on the couch, and you said, no, I promised that I'd be different. And it looks like you fulfilled on that promise. Well done,
I like
you.
I like to think so. Yeah. But they're
Yeah.
still in college.
Well, no, they're still that. But so your sons are transitioning, but we don't stop
Yeah.
transitioning as we get older. What kind of
No, we
transitions are
don't.
you going through now?
Well, I think I had the heaviest transition. Years and years ago, I went through a divorce, and
Mm-hmm.
it was, at that time, it was, well, so first of all, when I became sober, we had been married, I think 13 or 14 years. And part of the steps is making amends. Right. And when when it was time to make my reach to my ex-wife, it became apparent that that well was completely dry. There was nothing left. And so that was devastating for me, because I had gone through this, this spiritual and character, confidence and character building that was relieved of me because of my dependency on alcohol, to a dependency on my higher power, to a dependency on making myself better. And that was challenging. So we eventually divorced, I think 4 years later, and I didn't want to give it up. It's funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I was so content, like making that a promise, that I wanted a household with a dad, mom, and kids, right? And my good friend Scott told me, says, you know what? They'll be happier when you're divorced, because there's so much conflict in the house, right? There's so much
Yeah.
stress. And the cool thing that we did, though, is I finally relented and said, let's do this, or how you get divorced is we nested. And what that means is we kept our house. The kids stayed put. And then every week, mom and dad show up. So my ex, their mom would go to her mother's and stay for the week. And I had rented a one one bedroom place out of, a house, that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And we would switch off and back and forth. And because I was so worried, knowing like I told you, I started drinking at 13. Well, from 13 to 18, I got in trouble with the law, everything. It was bad. I was a bad boy on the wrong side of the tracks, right? Because that was me, releasing my anger. And I was
Yeah.
so scared with the divorce that I was actually always scared whenever my kids grew up that they would be like me, because I was
Mm.
bad news, and I didn't want them to do that or be a part of that and that kind of stuff. Anyway, this nesting opportunity worked. Their grades stayed the same, if not improved. Their friends stayed the same. And it worked out phenomenal. So, I mean,
That's a
like,
brilliant solution, and I love that unconventional thinking, and the idea is that maybe it was a happier environment for your kids because they were each happy and loving with you and your ex-wife
yeah,
individually. It's just that the two of you just didn't work as a relationship at that point.
yeah, yeah. I may not pick or the spouse I chose. We may have not worked out. All right. But I did choose an amazing mom.
Yeah.
She does love her boys, and that's fortunate. That's why both my boys, like when we got divorced, didn't get in trouble with the law. Their grades went up. They're now in college. I cannot say how proud I am of my boys. And I think it's because of both loving mom and dads. Which is so important, right?
Wow, what a wonderful choice the two of you made. It doesn't go down like that for most couples who separate. So really, well done on both of you. And so um, now you've kind of been you've been single or not married for a good number of years, and your boys are kind of moving on. Are you thinking about your own transitions as Michael now? Like what happens to Michael between 2024 and what happens next?
Yeah, I've got it pretty mapped out. I know my retirement year.
Awesome.
I already have my small home, which is, I bought a place in Palm Desert, which is now where my mom comes and stays. I'm on a
Good.
golf course. Ready for this? I own a golf cart. Never in my life would I have thought I would ever own a golf cart.
Blue collar boy from Vancouver done good. He's got a golf cart in Palm Springs.
Blue collar boy is got a golf cart, and he can jump on his private course anytime he wants. I mean, it's as funny as that is.
That's awesome.
And of course, the College of the Desert is the junior colleges up here. They're expanding, and I envision myself here full time, right? In a perfect world, here full time, teaching at the junior college. And of course, it's lighter schedule than full time, golfing on off days, that kind of stuff, and then traveling the world.
I love that plan for you, Michael. That's wonderful. So between now and retirement, what kind of transitions are you thinking about?
It's funny. I don't know. Like, I have the plan of my goal. So the transitions have yet to be revealed to me as to what that needs to get there and how, and the path that I'm going to take. I could be let go from my company, and that changes the retirement plan altogether. Right. So, but unfortunately, I have a very loving girlfriend who's just amazing. And she wants to travel. She's athletic and just a wonderful kindred spirit. And so I vision myself being with her for sure. And, but I haven't thought about specifically transition. It's more of I recently got promoted. So I guess
congratulations.
That's a transition.
Well done, you.
Now work is even more stressful.
Which is what you carry, right when you ask for that responsibility. The reason one of the reasons I asked, you had mentioned in the conversation starter that you're getting ready to embark on kind of a fitness challenge or a fitness goal. Can you speak to that? Is that something? And I'm curious as to why you decided to do that.
There's my favorite line from a great movie, The Untouchables. The one with Kevin Costner. Well, Sean Connery goes, "What are you prepared to do?" Right? What are you prepared to do? And if I Google dad's bod, I'd be like, that's not me. And then part of me was thinking, starting to look like a dad spot, right? And
Hmm.
and then I would go, oh, okay, this week I'm going to go 3 times to the gym. And then the other days I was too tired, too much work, or I couldn't get to it, right? And then you look for like, so when you get that urge personally, for me, and I think it's for other men as well, right? You have that desire, right? And you look for signals that say this is important. So I ran into a good friend of mine. I was in Los Angeles earlier this month at one of our company's huge event, hosting our customers, partners, etc. And he came to visit me. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And the first thing I said to him, I said, "Holy cow, you look amazing!" And he told me he was taking this protein diet. It was a liquid juice that he was just doing for lunch and dinner. Sorry, breakfast and lunch. And he lost
Hmm.
like 25, 30 pounds, right? Now, that was a spark, right? And so, you know, so I like to take big chunks. So if this is a transition, this is a big chunk. And I realized I was looking up this product and going, okay, is this something I do? How much is it going to cost? And I'm like, Michael, you can do this yourself. You can make a commitment, right? Right. To do this and make that fitness transition if you want. And so I always go big and bold. I said it's going to be a 90-day initiative. I just labeled it 90 days. And then what I did was I told everybody about that would listen to me, like that I would talk to, right?
Hmm.
And what that 90-day commitment is, I work out every day for an hour, every day,
Great.
right? It could be an hour bike ride. It doesn't matter, but I generally go to the gym, right? So every day I work out. I've then got a little food scale. I looked at my current weight. I looked at my, reduction calories, what that kind of stuff. I'm about 1,900 calories. So I started weighing my food and stuff. So I'm targeting now exact amount of calories.
Hmm.
And so I'm on day 9 now. And originally when I sent the offer to join you, I said, hey, let's meet in 90 days so I could talk about that. And you said, no, let's meet now and let's hear about this, because
That's
by
right.
me telling you this, I'm committing even stronger, right? The last
Right.
thing I want to do is come back in January and you go, how did it go? I go, oh, I got to 40 days and gave up, right? That ain't going to happen.
Right. Well, and also too, you've got now, you know, all of our menfolk listeners are with you on this journey, and they say you'll get to 90, but you've got your sons and your girlfriend, and you've got friends around you to help you stay committed. It's an interesting thing when you start having an intention, and there's a tremendous power that comes from that kind of intentional thinking, right? Where it's a very specific goal that you've got, and then you wake up intentionally doing that, and then suddenly you're weighing your food and you're looking at that caloric reduction. Are you running a calorie deficit? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm running at 80%.
80%. Okay. And then, once you do that, it starts becoming habit. It's interesting because you're sober, and that helps too because you don't have the extra calories from alcohol. And so there are these things where suddenly habitually it'll start becoming part of your life, and not just a 90-day thing. My hunch is that on day 91, my hunch is that you're still going to be measuring your food,
Right.
right?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because to be in the desired shape, weight that you want to be, it's a lifestyle, right? You have to be cognizant of that. My girlfriend, God love her, she has her dad was a Oakland Raider player, and that family gene has metabolism up to their old age. So whatever she eats, she just burns off. She looks fantastic. So, did I eat more? But I certainly ate along, right? And then after, we've been dating almost 3 years, or 3 years, sorry, 3 years. And I was like, I'm putting on weight because I'm just eating the same amount as her, but she burns it off.
That's hilarious. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
So, but I have to, yeah, it's a lifestyle change. And it's even in like day 8, like the energy level, I'm drinking less coffee, right?
Mm,
I mean, I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is I go on a 25-minute bike ride, right? First thing,
great.
go. And that's new to me. I'd wake up and I'd have to have like 3 or 4 cups before I felt awake, right?
Mm.
So,
Also, too, I think
hopefully,
in today's world of being able to work remote, do you work remote or do you go into the office?
yes. I do go in the office because it's close by in San Diego, but like I'm in Palm Desert right now. So yeah, I'm
Oh,
working
right.
remote. Yeah.
Sure. And so that allows you, some of that flexibility now allows you to kind of adjust your life in terms of taking care of whole self. Instead of saying, I got to be in the office at 8:30 or at 9 o'clock, right? Because
Fair enough.
you can work in hours that are maybe not necessarily unconventional, but you can still either spend more time or the same amount or more time at work, but you just do it in a different schedule so that you can take care of yourself a little bit better.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm a morning person, so I get a lot of calls with Europe and East Coast, and so I'm up early. Like my thrusted meetings are, up till noon, and then it tapers off, and I work on those projects which you finally have time to. So that gives me that flexibility that you're talking about. I'm at really good company, great company, and I'm fortunate to be there.
That's fantastic.
So career-wise, I'm in a really, really good place.
Well, you've earned it, and you've worked hard for it. So I've got one last question for you, Michael. Who is someone that you know that I don't know that I should know?
I think I'm going to throw this out here 1 second because I was thinking about, being a marketer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see the channels and platforms you're posting on. I'm looking at the views going, this gentleman needs maybe a bump in viewership or exposure. I'll use exposure
I agree.
as the right word.
I agree.
I would, 1 second. I'm going to introduce you to a YouTuber that I listen to him every day. Like you, he said he talks about men in relationships. Now it's not men in relationships, and he does a 20-minute YouTube video every day, and I watch it religiously because I love listening to man. And but he goes, it's funny. I tried TikTok, I tried Instagram, and then I said, okay, it's got a YouTube. He got some guidance. Hey, YouTube is the way to go. And he did that 20-minute recording every day for I can't remember what the date was, like 3 or 4 months, and no ticks. And then all of a sudden, the algorithm exploded. He's now almost at 100,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And he's the reason why I want to introduce him. I'll see if I can connect. Well, obviously he's a YouTuber, so it's not like he's waiting for Michael Singer to say hello. But he's also said, hey, I'm more than happy to help people out if they're trying to go as an influencer in whatever capacity. I'm not, I would definitely try to, I would say, talk to this man. He's got a track record.
That's a great lead. I love it. I appreciate that very much. I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Well, Michael, what a delight. What a delight.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful that you took the time and, opened yourself up and, got us a peek into how you've gone through your own journey. And I'm so excited to talk with you again in 90 days. Now you have to take your shirt off, you realize.
No.
But hey, no, that's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to hearing about that next stage.
Yeah. And thank you for hosting me, but thank you for doing this. We men today, right, need this kind of man talk and this guidance, right? We're not getting it, or we're shamed for being, showing male traits, whatever, that kind of stuff. So when I started listening to it, it's like this kind of conversation needs to happen. We men need to talk to other men, because we men don't BS each other. If we say, Christopher, that's a stupid idea, when I tell you, it's not because I'm being hateful. It's telling you because I care about you, or whatever the reason, right? And so these are great conversations. I hope you continue doing this. And I hope you are successful doing this, because we need more of this.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that blessing, and I will continue it. And I'll contact your friend to see if we can help grow it together.
All right. Right on.
My friend, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you. Good night, Christopher.
Good night. Wow, what a conversation with my friend Michael. What an interesting way to live, to grow up, to figure out that his father had these normal patterns within the times that he was drinking, right? To have a dad who he had to gauge based on how many drinks he was into the day. That's how he knew how to navigate that. What does that do for you in terms of how you prepare your own navigation for the world? What does that do for you in terms of how you think about other people and how to navigate with other people? He seemed to figure it out. Michael seemed to have made his own life and made a path for himself that maybe wasn't preordained. Maybe he just made it. Maybe he had some divine inspiration. Maybe inspiration comes from other places that we don't quite know about. Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's a book you read. Maybe it's a willingness to figure out that you don't want to live a life that you grew up in, and you don't want to make a life for your kids that you grew up in, and you want to make a life for you and your kids the way you envision it in your ideal world. What did we learn from Michael? We learned that you don't have to repeat the patterns of your parents. You can figure out a way for yourself. I love that. I love learning from Michael, and I hope you did too. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you tell your friends about it. Tell 5, 10 of your men friends. Get them to listen. Get them to subscribe. Frick, have you subscribe. It'd be awesome. Subscribe to the podcast. And of course, I'd love to have you on the show. Visit menfolkjourneys.com. Book a conversation. I'll make it comfortable. We'll have a fantastic yik yak so other men can learn from your stories too. Again, tell your friends. Visit menfolkjourneys.com and enjoy another episode. And thank you so much for listening. Word bid Falarid.